Hi, this is Dan Harris, and welcome to another episode of the Ironbird Podcast, your go-to source for everything private aviation. Today, we're thrilled to have Kolin Jones, the founder and CEO of Amalfi Jets. Kolin shares his journey from an aviation enthusiast to industry innovator, how Amalfi Jets delivers exceptional service to their clients worldwide, his thoughts on the evolving private aviation landscape, from the value of charter brokers provide to the rise of jet card programs, and even how social media plays a role in today's private aviation space. This is a conversation you won't want to miss. Let's dive in. Kolin, you want to start us off with just outlining, how you started Amalfi Jets?
Yeah. So I started Amalfi Jets 4.5 years ago. I was 19. I went to Embry-Riddle in Daytona Beach, and it was during COVID. So I got my private when I was 17 at Van Nuys Airport. Wanted to go be an airline pilot. My goal was actually go fly for NetJets. Always wanted to do that. Got my instrument rating, and COVID happened. So all my friends that had class dates at the airlines were getting canceled because no one was hiring pilots. Wow. So I was like, well, shoot, Embry-Riddle's not cheap. Flight training's not cheap. I'm not gonna have a job. This is silly. But growing up at Van Nuys and at that airport, always loved private jets. And as a kid, you think private jets is this great, glorious, glamorous thing. So I remember I was just doing research on how can I get into space. Always was an entrepreneur, started a bunch of different e-com companies in high school. Yeah. Sold things on Amazon and stuff like that. But I was like, there's a lot of room to grow in space. So I created a fake rich person email, James Middleton III, reached out to every single broker that I could find. And one of the biggest things that shocked me is a lot of these brokers didn't know what they were talking about. Yeah. So I remember I had one guy was like, yeah, the Phenom 300 could take 12 people and can fly nonstop from Van Nuys to London. And I was like, pretty sure it can't. Yeah. So I saw this time and time again. And, they would send me a quote, tiny little grainy photo of an airplane with like 80 grand. And I was like, this is not what I thought the aviation industry was going to be like. So essentially made a website, and I was like, boom, Amalfi Jets, we're a company. Reached out to one of my old best friends from high school who's big into finance. And I called him and I was like, hey, there's opportunity for growth. The original name of Amalfi was Jones Jets International, which sucked, obviously. So we changed it to Amalfi Jets.
Is that the name of your LLC still?
No, it's still Amalfi Jets. Yeah. But my business partner grew up on Amalfi Drive in the Palisades. So we actually named it after the street. Everyone thinks we named it after the coast. But we made the website, made the emails, and I was like, great, we're a company. I was like, we need to get clients. So our biggest thing is I was like, listen, there's so many people that don't know anything about aviation. So I gave him pretty much like an Embry-Riddle 101 course on here's everything about the industry. Here's how we have a chance because these companies don't know what they're talking about. So we literally just started emailing everyone. Like I'd look up Los Angeles attorney and just scraped it and literally would never leave Starbucks until we would send 2,000-3,000 emails a day. Pretty much did this for about 8 months.
What was the first client you landed?
First client was actually your largest client.
Wow.
Still is today. It was a film studio. And they said, hi, we're trying to get XYZ person from LA to New York for a big showing. Can you help us out? And I was like, absolutely, we can. So reached out to obviously all the operators, and we sold our first trip at that point. And,
how long did that take you?
7 months.
Wow.
So for 7 months, I was literally in my college dorm, just literally sitting at my desk. I used to have to turn my desk around on like different business calls because my background was my shirtless roommate playing COD behind me. So I used to turn my desk around, and the background was my wall. And our biggest goal was to get clients to really kind of establish yourself as the industry, because one of the biggest things that I didn't like and was disappointed with the industry was a lot of these brokers aren't pilots. They don't have that aviation experience. So a lot of the things that they were quoting were just wrong. And I was like, I'm a pilot. I know that this is wrong. Yeah. But for a vast majority of the people that are chartering these jets, EAs and so forth, they have no idea. And they would have no idea if they booked them on an illegal charter, or if, they booked a Citation 10 and had 15 people show up. Yeah. Right. So that was kind of the original need for us. And, after 7 months, kept emailing, wasn't really getting a lot of traction because, again, who's heard of Amalfi Jets? So I sat my business partner down. I was like, hey, what's a very trustworthy, reputable brand that you trust? And we both, at the same time, were like, the Ritz-Carlton. I was like, perfect. So we need to partner with the Ritz-Carlton. So we called the one in Los Angeles, Waikiki, Hawaii, and San Francisco. We're like, hey, we're a private jet company. When our clients fly into LA, we'd love to be able to send them to your hotel. Yeah. We don't want anything. We'll cover the 10% discount ourselves. If you write them a letter, upgrade them if you can, great. And I was like, the only thing is, can we list your logo on our website? And they were like, yeah, that's fine.
Smart.
So boom. So now we weren't just Amalfi Jets. We're Amalfi Jets trusted by the Ritz-Carlton. So that kind of helped us a little bit. Obviously, people were like, oh, I've never heard of you. I'm like, oh, no, it's fine. But we're partnering with the Ritz-Carlton. Hey, come check this out. Right? Yeah. If you come to LA, we'd love to help you stay there. So that helped us. And then obviously, it's kind of grown. So right now, 4.5 years in, we have 15 employees. Wow. This year on track to 4 times revenue what we did last year. And in the past 2 years, we've been able to double our revenue year over year. So our biggest, kind of focus as we grow is to become one of the industry leaders, but also to be the standard for safety in terms of sourcing, understanding how, everything works. Like we have our own internal flight ops team that I rebuilt on our tech platform. We rebuilt kind of what I used to use at Embry-Riddle. It's like this kind of risk assessment score. So we put in trip parameters. Hey, are we flying into a mountainous airport? Okay. How's the weather? Are we flying into, that? Are we loading the airplane up to max capacity? Great. And we'd calculate this like a rough risk assessment score, 1 out of 10, right? 10's obviously a lot of risk, turn red. So that's why when we email the operator, we're explaining all of the risks that we've encountered. Hi, how can we mitigate this before it becomes a problem? So we're checking everything from passenger weight to luggage weight to, I'm still a pilot, so I still have my 4-flight access that are logged into everything. So we really try to stay ahead and be very, very proactive with everything we do.
What's the last flight that had like a red flag on it?
A couple weeks ago, it was a Nextant 400 XTI, 6 people, so not fully at the capacity. Putting in 7 or 8 in the Nextant's kind of tight. In Aspen. Yeah. So there was that, and it was the opposite because it was cold, it was winter. So there were some risks there. But again, we explained to our clients, like all of our clients were very, very skinny and didn't bring very much luggage.
That's good, yeah. And the Nextant, if you compare the Nextant to like the classic Beechcraft or the Hawker, their performance are a little different, right?
A little bit different. The Nextant's better. The pilot's going to notice that you have better avionics in the cockpit, better situational awareness. Performance is better. But from the passenger's perspective, they're like, oh, it's nice inside.
Yeah, passengers don't know. Yeah. From the beginning of Amalfi to now, like how have you seen the growth? Are you growing with specific client bases, or like what have you seen in that trajectory growth of like, all right, here's what's been really working for us, and here's what clients are kind of seem to be kind of sticking with?
Yeah, our business right now is about 60-40 split. So 60-40, 60% just all China with individuals, like our own individual clients, 40% companies. We work with public, private companies. Film studios is one of our largest drivers of business. We're an exclusive vendor with 6 studios. But one thing that we noticed is, obviously just growing the client base, obviously, but we focus on client retention, right? The people that fly private, you're not flying private once a year, you're flying often. We have some customers that travel, like one of our largest customers travels once or 2 times a week. We fly him to the office on Monday, fly him back on Friday. He lives in Vegas. The office is in the Bay Area.
Not the Starbucks CEO?
No, so we are definitely not him. Love to. They just bought a new G700. But no, like he's one of our largest customers. He's great. So we're like the Uber Black to the office. But retention is really important to us. One thing that we found really successful is just, again, it sounds cheesy, everyone says it, being ultra personalized, but we track everything. Like our goal is to be very, very data driven. So if our customer flies with us and let's say he's on a CJ3 Plus and he's like, oh, I love this, better than the CJ3. Great. Note in our file, we're not putting him on a CJ3. Let's put him on a CJ3 Plus, maybe CJ4 Phenom. So we get very, very specific. Like we track all of the catering orders. We know everything that our customers want. So a lot of times we'll just email them once they book the flight and be like, hi, John, you're on board the CJ3. Want to confirm you'd like 2 Cobb salads, a fruit tray, and harmless harvest coconut water. And most of the time customers are like, wow. I would love that. So that's been successful. And then one of the last things that we've done, which is something that we actually started a long time ago, was having a physical Amalfi departure representative at 95% of our departures. So one of the biggest problems we had was one of our first flights, client was flying at Teterboro. And at Teterboro, there's like 9 different FBOs. And it was an international flight with custom slots. And they had to leave at a certain time. And, we get a call from the pilot saying, hey, your passenger's not here. And I'm like, you sure? He's at Signature. And turns out he was at the other Signature on the other side of the field. And I was like, shoot. And it ended up working out. Signature coordinated. It was great. But I remember I looked at my business partner and I was like, hey, it'd be so much easier if we were there. He paid us like $100,000 for this flight to London. The least we could do is show up. So we actually hire right now 14, 15 different students from Embry-Riddle, only from Embry-Riddle. So they're all pilots, so they can really talk the talk. But we literally fly them out commercially to meet and greet every single client at every single departure airport. So they're wearing a suit, they have our stuff, they know the client's name, allows us to control that process. And you fly with us versus another broker, there's a clear differentiator of, wow, I didn't have someone meeting me at the airplane this time.
And there's a clear, it's when you've got departures, there's so many lines of communication sometimes. It's, crew members to an operations team to a customer service team so it's smart having someone there because you cut that communication chain that can be 5 to 10. I quite often don't even call operation teams. I just call FBOs. Say, hey, can you get me the pilots, please? And I know operators sometimes don't like that. But when we need an answer, it's hard to go through these different layers. And that's sometimes an issue with some larger companies too. NetJets does a ton of great things. So, but when you're a very large company and you set these procedures up,
Yeah.
sometimes it's hard to get those fast answers.
Yeah, I mean, and I think as you scale, I don't want to say it's inevitable, but when you have 12, 13,000 customers with a finite number of employees, you're 100% going to lose that personal touch.
Yeah.
So that's one area that we've excelled, but we're also growing our client base. We're hiring more people in the flight ops team, a CSM team. We now have a 24/7 team that's always available, monitoring everything. But yeah, I mean, that's really, really important. But our reps have saved us in some very precarious situations of, hey, the catering didn't show up. Great. So we'll put together an entire catering order through like DoorDash last minute. Our reps, it's funny, our reps sometimes will just bump into other people and they're like, oh, we're flying with XYZ company. What are you doing? It's like, oh, I'm meeting my client here. It's like, oh, well, my company never does that. And they're passing out the card. It's like, oh, well, you should give us a call next time. So we've gotten some good clients that way.
I have a personal vendetta against catering.
Terrible. There's no good company. There's one big company that does everything.
Yeah.
They're the worst.
Yeah. And it quite often sets people up for failure. The only saving grace that I've found with catering is sending cost estimates before.
Yeah.
Hey, I know you ordered a fruit plate and these things. Here's what it cost. I would say 50% of the time, clients are like, what?
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's like, I know the fruit plate costs $40 per size. That's crazy. But there's like the fuel fee, the FBO fee, like,
there's just enough fees. It's kind of like the FU fee at this point.
Yeah.
Like some of our orders, we've ordered a salad and it's like a $400 salad. And it's like, shit, you know,
it's
you kind of have to eat that
orders,
because you can't bill that to the client. You look scummy.
And then even sometimes when you're doing that and then you get the bill back like 2 months afterwards from some operators that just aren't from an accounting standpoint super efficient. Those are so hard. Those conversations are so hard to have with clients.
2-3 weeks later, hey, also forgot to invoice you for you know, the lemon that you requested for your lemonade.
Yeah, and it's like you gotta eat that.
Yeah.
So that's a tough one. Talking about brokers and operators, where do you see the differences on the client side from working with a broker versus an operator?
Yeah, I mean, I think operators are good. I mean, obviously, you know, roughly like 80-85% of operators' businesses come from brokers. I would say operators are very, you know, for a smaller operator, are stuck in one spot. So their airplanes are based there. So we have a lot of customers that have obviously multiple homes. So, you know, while the operator you're working with is based in Van Nuys, you rip it to Aspen. When you fly back from Aspen, you're paying a hefty repositioning fee. So we have a lot of customers that sometimes will go direct to operator. We don't encounter that much, but I guess the value out of a broker is the fact that your experience, you have your clear sourcing standards. We're very, very strict with our sourcing standards. Quality insurance, like we remove airplanes from our network because we get a photo from the reps that are at the airplanes, and it's like, hey guys, like the carpet here has not been cleaned, it looks really bad. So we maintain that pretty well. But I'd also say just like being proactive. Operators are busy dealing with the flight operations aspects. So a lot of the customer service things kind of gets lacked. So even catering things, like knowing that, hey, my customer every time he flies with us, he wants the Sunday edition of the New York Times. We need to figure out how to find that. But it's funny, we're talking about catering. We did a big study. We yanked all the data. Our most popular catering order is Chick-fil-A.
Really?
Yep. Out of everything. No caviar, no oysters.
Sundays are tough then for you guys.
Very tough. We need to explain that. McDonald's is a good backup. But yeah, it's funny.
That's probably a little bit better though than trying to order chicken fingers from a caterer that costs $100 versus just DoorDash
and sometimes
Chick-fil-A.
it's better. The catering is not very good on board private jets. It's usually stale, gets delivered a couple hours early.
Especially if you don't have a flight attendant. Yeah. If you don't have a flight attendant, managing catering, even like a Superman, like a Challenger 300, managing catering, a passenger shouldn't be using heating devices on the airplane. Like, there's an oven or then microwaves are a little bit better, but like still like concerns me when passengers order catering that needs to be heated. And I'm usually like, hey, like there's not a flight attendant on this board. I know there's a microwave, but like I don't want you setting a fire in the microwave on a Challenger 300 or
burning yourself or something like that. Yeah, I mean, and that's part of why we do the reps too. Like by having a rep in an airplane, like it is silly. Like on some situations, like we had a customer flying out of St. Moritz and it cost us $3,300 to send a rep there. Dumb expense. But our rep got there. Flying private in Europe is just a big pain in the butt going through all the different international terminals and stuff like that. So our reps there, but when we deal with heating components, we'll have the reps heated up in the FBO.
Yeah, smart.
For light jets, we'd have it very clear, hey, there's no heating component. We recommend just order like a cold sandwich or something like that. But yeah, heating components on airplanes.
Catering.
Big pain in the butt.
Yeah, catering's tough.
Yeah.
And one thing, I think you touched on it with operators, I want operators focusing on operating airplanes. And they've got a lot. They've got to deal with airplane owners.
Yep.
They've got to deal with pilots, as you know, or a pain in the ass, as
Definitely.
you're one. So, that they're dealing with a lot.
Yeah.
Now they also have to deal with customers and all those things. I mean, that's tough. And I see that's where a broker can add a ton of value because he's only focusing on one thing.
Yeah.
Just that client success.
Yeah.
And if he's just focusing on that and partners with really good operators that know how to operate airplanes, know how to train crew, are very safe.
Yeah.
That's like a match made in heaven when
Yeah.
I look at those things. And there's nothing wrong with booking directly from operators. Some operators do a great job, but just that focus, I think, where brokers add a ton of value. That I think that's really where you can find, if you find good brokers.
Yeah.
And like you said, there's a million brokers. Because I want you to outline what it takes to start a charter brokerage. What does it take?
Yeah.
If someone wants to start a charter brokerage today, what do they need?
This is a testy subject. So technically, to start, you need a website, an email. That's it.
Yeah.
Which, in my opinion, is way too little.
Yeah.
In my opinion, there should be obviously some good regulation on that aspect, right? Like, for example, when the whole drone frenzy came out, you needed now a Part 107 drone license to operate, teaching you basic airspace stuff. Don't fly it next to a Class Bravo airspace and fly it up the arrival path or something like that. But currently, right now, the only thing that brokers are subject to is Part 295, which is the required disclosure. So you need to make it clear on your website, hey, we're not an operator. We contract for you with 135 operators or the foreign equivalent. Here's how much insurance we have or do not have. And when you're operating, when you book a flight, you need to notify them technically before they book who the operator is, which, again, most brokers don't even know that. And a lot of people don't do that. But to start, it's really not much. I mean, obviously access to some platforms and so forth, but I think you really need an understanding of aviation. It's like, why are you going into this industry?
Yeah.
People go in the industry because, you want to make a bunch of money. It's like, but, when we first started, our goal was, it sounds cheesy, but I think companies need a mission greater than themselves. And being a pilot, getting my license at Van Nuys, being surrounded by private jets, I was always like, wow, flying private is this amazing, awesome thing. And seeing how the industry was running, I was like, this is not very elegant. It's not what I thought it was going to be. So our goal is to always kind of provide that ridiculous experience on every single flight. And with that, there's that knowledge aspect. Like, the customer reaches out and says, hey, I want to go to Aspen and I have 7 people. It's like, all right, well, I probably wouldn't recommend like a Hawk or 800. I'd recommend something bigger. We are going in the summer. We have density, altitude is a factor. We have performance. If we're going to Telluride, maybe we want something a little bit bigger and we don't want to overload it. So I think brokers provide that extra value add that's important.
Yeah, and you mentioned customer service being super important. I think a lot of people are also gotten away from customer service, and I don't know if it was just COVID or if it's happened before, but a lot of the times it's become so transactional.
Yeah.
That people are just airplane and price. Yeah. And when you dig in, it's like, oh, what are you traveling for?
Yeah.
You've got a birthday, or your son's graduating, or a lot of people are getting away from that. And it's kind of comes down to, like, if someone's looking to find a good charter broker, what are some of the things that you tell people, you tell clients to look for when they're looking for a good charter broker?
Yeah, so we put together a big, like, how to safely charter a private jet deck. And it was like 80 questions. It's like, here's everything you need to be asking. So, the broker you're speaking with, how long have you been in the industry? What is your experience? How much do you know about airplanes? Or are you a pilot, right? Where were you working before this? I think a lot in terms of like who, so you're putting me on different operators' airplanes. Who are these operators? Can I see their certificate? What kind of insurance do they have? Have they ever had an incident? And if they had an incident, was it their fault? Right? A lot of different aspects, like what kind of systems are you using? How's my data going to be protected working with you? Yeah. If the airplane breaks, how do you handle that? Right? Are you just saying, all right, here's your refund. Sorry, best of luck. Or are you helping me find an airplane? Yeah. So I think plenty of questions you could be asking.
Yeah. I think insurance is one of the things that people really gloss over. Yeah. And I really see it as the canary in the coal mine, that if you're operating, let's just say a Hawk or 800, and you've got, 25 million it's like, why are you trying to save money on insurance? Yeah. If you're trying to save money on insurance, like where else are you trying to save money on?
Especially in the aviation industry, like operators have pretty razor thin margins, right? Especially, if you own the airplanes, a little bit better, but still. So, in any company, aviation specific, when there's financial stress, the next thing that's going to happen is you're going to start cutting corners, right? And it's a problem. So our insurance minimum is 50 million. Yep. So if it's 25, red flag. We've seen some where it's $1 million, and I'm like, the airplane's worth more than $1 million. I know. And the crazy thing is there's not even like a necessary 135 regulation on insurance minimums per aircraft type or per category. That should be a thing. Yeah. But there's that, and it's like, great. So if we're insurance as low as you mentioned, all right, are we filling our airplane up with bare minimum fuel to land with IFR minimums? Are the pilots not maybe getting, going to recurrent training?
Yeah.
And you can also track it too. We track tails and see when do they land, when do they take off, and it's like, that's right at minimum rest.
Yeah.
And if you start seeing that pattern day over day, okay, well, usually the same crew with some operators are sticking with that tail, or only have one crew per aircraft type. That's a risk.
Yeah.
That's a risk factor, right? Yeah. How long can you keep putting a crew at minimum rest before, you start forgetting things? Yeah. Like at Riddle, we had this big pre-flight assessment. And I remember it was silly stuff. It was like, are you stressed? And I remember one time my girlfriend and I were about to break up, and I was doing a solo flight, and I literally was like, am I stressed? And I was like, honestly, yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember I went out to the airplane and I was doing my pre-flight, and I literally went to start up and I looked over and the pitot cover was still on. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to fly today.
Not my day today.
This is not my day.
Yeah.
But again, that translates over into operators. And again, it's really important that you have that safety first culture. They just passed a new law regarding the SMS system, which is helpful. But again, brokers don't have an SMS system. Yeah. They probably should.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And there's most operators and brokers fall back on the two main auditors, right? Argus and Wyvern.
Yeah.
But everyone I've talked to that operates airplanes tell me that's not a true picture of safety. It's good, it helps, but really there's so many other factors of does this airplane have they had incidents before, like you said, and how much is this airplane flying? And how much is this crew flying? What's their some of the time and type? Those are interesting, good pieces of data, but there's so much more than is this Argus Platinum or Wyvern Wingman? That's just such a small part of safety. Yeah. They've done a great job marketing it as the end all be all of safety. But it just there's so much more that when you're working with someone that understands what that is, I think there's a lot of value in the brokerages and the people inside those brokerages that truly understand what that is. Yeah. To get a better feeling of safety when you're traveling privately.
Yeah, we had a customer that used to reach out and say the same thing. It was like Argus Platinum only. And I was like, well, yes, but an Argus Platinum operator is not less or more safe than someone that's Argus Gold. Yeah. Right? How do the pilots like working there? Are they at, if you notice high pilot exiting, it's like, all right, well, is there a safety problem that's there? And again, there's been incidents with very reputable Argus Platinum operators.
The last 3 big incidents
were Argus Platinum.
And they're still Argus Platinum. Yep. They haven't lost their Argus Platinum.
All of those companies are on our blacklist until we see the NTSB report, which is going to take 2 or 3 years. But it's like, great, what happened? Was that maybe an AD on the airplane type specifically? That's something to monitor. Yeah. Is it the fuel, right? Yeah. Using maybe new sustainable aviation fuel or something like that? Yeah. Is the maintenance? And again, I think you need to be proactive. So we lost a deal recently to another broker that the client sent us a photo and is an operator that had an incident. And I was like, well, listen, we can't sell you this trip. Yeah. They're like, well, why? And I was like, well, I don't want to speak bad about them, but there was an incident that until it's resolved, we can't work with them. And he's like, oh, well, it's cheaper. I was like, okay.
You get what you pay for quite often, right?
Yeah. And again, I'm sure they're a great company and I'm sure they're going to figure out what happened, but you need those kind of guardrails within a brokerage.
Yeah. When a client is looking at on-demand charter versus jet cards, what are you advising clients how to compare each and what works for one or the other?
Yeah. It depends. We have, So 2 of our largest customers own planes. One of them owns a Global 6000, one of them owns a G6. And we're the supplemental lift option, right? So when the airplane has scheduled maintenance, if their business partner or whatever is using it, we're the supplemental option. And one of those customers still just charters with us. He's like, well, I don't want to shove money in a jet card program. I've had bad experiences in the past. So usually what we tell people is if you're flying between 50 and 100 hours a year, a jet card program makes sense. There's some benefits of hosting money with the company, getting that better pricing, that more dedicated relationship and kind of that guaranteed availability that comes with that more on a corporate side. But again, on-demand charter, it's still great and you can still charter out. But again, okay, if we want to fly near Christmas time, you're going to expect market pricing to jump. Whereas I think more on the customers that want that guaranteed set pricing and know what they want, what they want to pay. Like I had a customer that was like, yeah, I flew to, Van Nuys, Teterboro and back on a 10, paid $75K. Then the next week I paid $85K. And then the week before that I paid $65. So it's kind of all over the place. Yeah. And I was like, well, it's market pricing. Let's look at the dates of this. Yeah. What happened? Maybe the operator that you're using wasn't positioned there. Maybe used a different citation 10. So I think there are benefits of the jet card, but it really kind of depends on what the customer prefers.
The jet card kind of takes that demand price and that kind of flows up and down charter. Jet card kind of flattens that out. The question is if that flatten out? If you look at how the curve goes up and down, are you going to be above that curve or below that curve more often than not?
And that's a dangerous thing with some jet cards. Obviously, the companies, lock people in at really, really good rates, and then they go to source it and they're just hemorrhaging cash time and time again. So again, our jet card pricing is built just on data. We track everything. So I want to know exactly what airplanes we booked. I want to know what the quotes are, and we can average it out and say, great, if we lock people in at these pricings, these times will make X percent. These times will maybe make this percent. Yeah. Maybe here's a rough gray area if you're doing like
you hopefully win a little bit more than you lose.
Yeah, exactly.
And usually when you're depositing funds with an operator or brokerage or any kind of program, they're assuming, all right, if you're going to guarantee me this amount of business, I will lower my margins a little bit because you're going to guarantee me 100, 200, 500,000. Then you're trusting me, then I'll kind of give that trust back by lowering my margins a little bit and guaranteeing your rate.
I don't want to call it buying loyalty, but I mean, you have customers that have money on deposit, it's less likely that they're going to be like, well, I need to shop this with 9 other companies. Like it's a trust thing. So I'm always on a lot of the intro calls with their customers and I was like, listen, you trust us. We're not going to screw you. Here's how our model works. Here's how we make money. But obviously you putting money in our account, it makes sense for us to give you the best pricing. Because if you start saying, hey, I'm going to lock in at this rate and every single time we're just charging more and more and more. I mean, that's not a good relationship to build.
What are the current programs that you guys offer?
Yeah, so we offer 2 programs. We have our Amalfi One Jet Card program. That's usually just for individuals. So a lot of programs require you to put in 25, 50, 100 hours. Ours works on a deposit basis. So minimum $100,000 to open the account. Funds can be used across all 5 aircraft categories that are industry low fixed hourly rates, inclusive of FET. But the one thing that separates us from a lot of the other programs is the Amalfi Jet Card has a 33-country primary service area. So we notice that a lot of customers will fly with us in the States. Usually we'll like first class travel over to Europe. Some customers will take like a global and then we'll fly private intra-Europe. And one of the complaints I got from a customer was he's like, every time I go to Europe, I have to use these like tiny little brokers. And I was like, John, like we can work there too. Your card works in these places. He was like, oh, great. And it's the same quality of aircraft, same sort of safety sourcing standards. Now, Argus and Wyvern aren't really popular over there, but again, they're not the big tell-all. So we do our own kind of audits and DD there. So the Amalfi Jet Cards for individuals, the Amalfi Enterprise program is something that we just launched. That's for corporations. So we notice a lot of companies that own jets that are public still charter out because you can still track their corporate airplanes. So we require minimum $250,000 deposit, guaranteed availability across the 33 countries because a lot of multinational companies have a lot of travel. Across all 5 aircraft categories. Sometimes the CEO takes a global, if he's going with all of the directors, and maybe if he's doing a quick little trip, he'll take a CJ3. So the ability to use whatever airplane you need. And then on the corporate side, you obviously have the car service, the catering, one of our Amalfi reps to kind of control that process. And then we built a new cardholder portal that allows these companies to add authorized users. So if you're a bigger company, you can have different like partners that have it. Multiple
different
airplanes.
Access to,
different. You can actually like change funds. So it's like, hey, if we have $1 million, this company or this department can use $500,000. This can use 100,000, and we allow multiple airplane uses at a time. Because again, on some board of directors, it's like, hey, the board can't fly on the same plane. It's like, got it. We'll have 2 planes, same FBO, but we can separate everything.
Do you separate the funds out? Because I know a lot of companies will just basically like throw all that money into their operating account and then
everything
have
is
an Excel sheet where they manage
that's dangerous. No, so we built our own system essentially. So all funds are held completely separate accounts. A lot of our clients opt for escrow accounts, which we encourage. It's like, listen, you don't trust us yet.
You just charge a little bit more for an escrow
account.
Like a little setup fee.
Yeah, and all of our programs have an 8% liquidation fee, and it's refundable. So it's not, hey, you give us the money, great, we're going to use this for operating expenses, which a lot of companies do quite often.
Pretty much every company that ever went bankrupt, that's what they were doing.
Yeah. So everything's fully separate. All OpEx is entirely independent, and we give clients visibility. We can even send them bank statements like, hey, here's how much money you have in it. It's still there.
This specific account number.
Yeah. And if we've only had 2 customers cancel, both were due to personal liquidity issues, but the refund time for when they canceled and getting it back was 48 hours. So we're not waiting 30 days to go make it up or anything.
Like, I got to sign someone else to,
Yeah.
You think you're ever going to get into owning airplanes?
Every pilot wants to own a jet. I'd be lying if I said, hey, we should buy a couple Gulfstreams. But then just doing a big audit on the fiscal aspect just doesn't make sense. Our model's healthy, it's sustainable. Personally, 100% going to buy a CJ3, fly it around, be awesome.
Not a Phenom 300? You like the CJ?
I do like the CJ. CJ3 Plus, CJ4 is nice. Phenom's good. Not a big fan of the Embraer yoke. I prefer more of a Cessna yoke.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, in the future, personally, getting into kind of like vertical consolidation can be good, but you're operating and jumping into a different business model. I don't think it's smart if you build a healthy, safe, sustainable model.
Yeah, there's a lot of risk in owning those big assets too. There can be
insurance premiums aren't cheap. Pilots aren't cheap. All the regulations,
tires, everything kind of gets it's really tough.
Yeah.
Have you seen client demands and needs change since you started to kind of where we are now?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say, we started during COVID. So a big thing was COVID safety. Hey, I want to make sure the pilots wear masks and I don't want to speak to the pilots. Obviously, that's kind of all gone away now.
I remember getting like pilot vaccination requests.
Yeah.
Which like when we were working for an operator, which was really hard.
Yeah.
Because like the whole vaccination thing was really tough and I don't want to dive into it because it's such a touchy subject. But like I remember getting like, hey, I only want vaccinated pilots. Man, we were fucking crazy.
Oh, geez.
But it's like, I can't tell you if someone's vaccinated or not.
You can't really ask that. And then pilots are going to have their own
opinion.
Everyone
was asking for it.
Yeah, that's tough. No, we haven't seen that. I'm glad that we're well over that COVID madness.
I'm happy we're past that.
But I would say just a lot of people prefer more personalized experiences. I mean, similar like when the hospitality trend, people are leaving less large resorts to more ultra exclusive places. Our clients are flying to smaller towns, doing smaller experiences. We track the hotels that they stay at. Again, smaller, more boutique, ultra luxury resorts. Corporations, owning private jets isn't very popular anymore. A lot of companies get canceled. Their CEOs get doxxed on the internet for using the corporate jet. So we've actually seen some public companies liquidate their fleet and decent fleets, and they're comparing fractional ownership, which has some benefits on the tax perspective, or a jet card. And the biggest thing, it's like, well, listen, with us, your money will physically fly further. You'll buy more time with us on a jet card program. So that's something that's been good for us, hence the launch of the enterprise program, because companies are exiting owning and operating airplanes for jet card programs.
What do you think about the differences on people that just book on apps versus calling a person an advisor?
I understand the appeal of the app. I think there's a problem in the aviation industry to overtech everything, right? The aviation industry, you have airplanes with millions of parts that all need to be working perfectly at the exact same time with pilots, with weather, so many different factors. So I get the approach, but I think it's silly. Unless you're an operator that owns your fleet, that has your schedule plugged in, that you can get that guaranteed instant booking availability. Yeah, good. Curious if they're making money doing that. But I've seen a lot.
If you look at some of the publicly traded ones,
no,
they're not yet.
They're hemorrhaging.
Yeah.
And one thing that we've noticed is a lot of these instant bookings, right? You provide an estimate and it's like, hey, it'll be 30 or 70. Customers will send us a quote at the 30 and say, hey, I can book this at 30 next door. And I'm like, go actually try to book that and see what happens. There's a couple companies that have an instant booking feature and then outsource to a call center in India. And that's a problem. Because I did it and I downloaded the app and I requested it. And I'm speaking to these people and I'm like, yeah, I want to charter a Phenom to London with 15 people. And he says, great. How can I help? And you want to over tech, and again, you want to scale, you want to get the data. I understand that on a business perspective, but you can't over tech the aviation industry. Just not built for that. So being a broker, you have the experience of someone would know, hey, we can't take a Phenom and fly to London. We can take a G5, but 15 people, maybe we want something even a little bit bigger. And I think that's more personalized. You know who to call, what operators are going to give you that better pricing. And again, I think there is a shift with all of these apps. I want the cheapest airplane, but you don't want the cheapest airplane. So a lot of these apps aggregate all data, all 135 operators, independent of their accident history, independent of their safety ratings, and you can get estimates and then kind of go through that process. But I think they need to go away with that.
I think what's dangerous too is like they'll get a price, right? You'll get a $30,000 price. Now it's this app's job to take that $30,000 price and make as much margin on it as possible. So they're not looking for the best airplane for this flight. They're looking for the one that's going to build up the most margin. Quite often, that's the worst airplane for this flight.
Definitely.
So it's like, all right, this airplane's at 20 grand. We're going to make 10,000. But this is like an old 1984 Citation 2. That you probably shouldn't even present from a 2 airplane operator.
That's actually the exact situation that one of our clients encountered. It was a light jet or similar, and the photo's a CJ3 on the website. Great, I'm getting a CJ3. No, it was a 1988 Citation 2. And it was configured to seat like 8 people, which is questionable. And they're going pretty much max range. That's one of the things that we were training the sales team on is they're like, hey, well, Colin, the range of the Phenom is 2,800 nautical. I was like, no, published, let's load it with fuel, airplanes,
with nobody in it,
right? So we have like a little system that it's like you plug in the details and it'll say red flag. This is likely over the performance of the airplane.
Are you using kind of your system to train some new employees to understand these intricacies?
Yeah. So our onboarding process for employees, because going to Embry-Riddle, being on the industry advisory board, safety is absolutely paramount. So we call it Aviation 101. So all new employees from marketing to admin to sales to literally everyone is great. Here's how the industry works. Here are all the issues. I have a big plane crash thing where I'm like, here are all the crashes that led to new rules in the book.
Wow.
Here's an example of a legal charter. Here's why we have the 1,500 hour ATP rule. Here's why we have crew rest rules and so forth. So within that process, we train them on that. We utilize our system, which plugs into, and it's like, hey, here's how we're sourcing. So marketing knows how sales jobs works. So when we're marketing stuff, we're not pushing instant app availability. You request a flight on the app, great. Our team will contact you with a quote. It's not an instant booking feature. We'd love to, but you just can't do that in this industry.
So do you provide any pricing on your website at all?
No. Well,
outside on demand charter, not on like jet cards.
Oh, no. So you request a flight, you reach us, and then our team reaches out.
Now, with your social being so popular, I can only assume you're getting a ton of requests that come in. How do you filter those through to be like, all right, who's legit and who's just wasting my time?
That's a problem, but it's a good problem. It's a growing pain.
It's a good problem.
We were getting 10, 15 calls a day. We get 600 to 700 phone calls a day. People see our phone call TikToks, want to be in a TikTok. We have, honestly, per month, about 100 to 200,000 people on the website, which converts into forms, which is a lot of. Our system filters based off preliminary qualifying questions. Are you currently flying private? Like, it's funny. We used to ask people, have you flown privately before in the past? And a bunch of people were like, yeah, like 20 years ago on my friend's plane. And it's like, okay, well, shoot. So are you currently flying private? Filtered out a bunch. How many private jet flights per year do you take? Great. And sometimes we'll have like an if-then rule. If you're flying private with what company, there's a drop-down select so we can get that data. That's filtered out a lot. A lot of complaints from the sales team of Kolin. I've spoken to 300 people today that aren't qualified, saw us on TikTok, want to call in to be on the TikTok. So,
better than speaking to 0 people, though, right?
Definitely. Yeah. So we now actually have people that we hired that work 24/7. So our phone call always picks up 24/7 on the main phone line. But really, it's just our system that's filtering out a lot of this.
Yeah.
But we have got great customers that love us on socials, and now we're customers of us.
Yeah. What was the strategy behind the socials? Like, who's the genius behind all the socials?
The genius behind all the socials is Hannah Warling, our wonderful marketing director. She's obviously a content creator herself. But one of the biggest things that I know is important to Hannah when we launched was the authenticity, right? People want to do business with people, not necessarily companies.
Yep.
And with a lot of the larger established companies that have been around for 20, 30 years, inventing the idea of flying private, we're not going to outbrand them by any method. But we can be a little bit more provocative than they would be. So when we first launched TikTok, I was like, this is so unprofessional. This is embarrassing. There's no way we're going to do this. Yeah. And some of our videos hit 20, 30 million views. Then we actually got some business from it. I was like, all right, I'm wrong, whatever. Literally like my day calendar, there's like 2 hours blocked to film TikToks.
Every day?
Every day.
Wow.
And we're promoting a lot of content. But the value there was authenticity. So people want to do business with people. So how can we show how we are as people? And honestly, the stories that you see on TikTok are true. Like I was the one that flew from Salt Lake City to New York to drop off the luggage for our customer when the Hawker wouldn't fit it. We've flown Chick-fil-A from LAX to Cabo to put Chick-fil-A on board a private jet because no one else could have done that.
Yep.
It's a little bit socky at that point, but still, we've done things.
It was
like
there,
that.
Yeah. Quite often, it's the thought that counts.
Exactly. So, the goal in socials is to obviously be provocative, be aggressive, get the name out there, and we have almost a little bit over 1 million followers across all platforms, and it's definitely given us a big boost within the industry.
Do you see yourself changing anything as you kind of go forward on the socials or anything like that?
I'd say becoming a little bit more informational, obviously touching on like more technical situations. Like we have some people from our sales team that are jumping in the TikToks, obviously showing off the aircraft and so forth. But I think just showing that we are people, here's how we do, but here's how we actually do business. And people have really resonated with that authenticity perspective. Like it sounds silly, and I absolutely don't want to be known for being a TikToker, but we had a customer call in and was like, hey, I want to buy the jet card, but I want to speak to Kolin first. And I was like, all right. So spoke with him, and he was like, hey, I just want to let you know that I love it. I've flown with XYZ other companies in the past, but the fact that you guys actually do this for your customers, I want to fly with you. So a lot of cool success stories like that.
Any customers were like, hey, don't put this on TikTok?
A lot. Yeah. It's funny. We record all the inbound calls. So one of our cardholders was like, hey, I want to speak to my account manager, but I really don't want this to be on TikTok. And we're like, it's not going to be on TikTok. Some people want to be on TikToks. Some people, one of our customers just called in and he's like, Kolin, I want caviar, oysters, and everything. And he was flying in the Caribbean. So there's like none of that there.
Yeah.
And he was like, and I want it to be posted on TikTok. And I was like, we're not doing that.
I can assume some clients are probably open to doing that, right?
Yeah. My biggest fear was, again, like some of our customers are older, a lot more conservative, that people were going to see us on TikTok and be, I want to close my jet card account. This is unprofessional. as of now, knocking on wood, that's never happened yet.
Yeah.
Honestly, a lot of people think it's funny. They resonate with it. They appreciate that level of service. And it's like, wow, I had no idea that Kolin was like that. I had no idea that Brian, my account manager, looked like that. Like, he seems like such a nice guy.
Yeah.
So that's been fun.
Where do you think, your jet card and your new enterprise program, how do you see that fitting in the full ecosystem of all other jet card programs and fractional programs?
Yeah, I mean, fractional is a separate thing. I think there's tax benefits there, but on an economics perspective, I don't think it really makes sense. Your money is just not flying as far with the monthly management fees and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But with the other jet cards, one thing that we realized is a lot of people were trying to put 10, 25, 40, 50, 100 hours, whatever. A lot of people don't want to upload that amount of money into the account. Obviously, given all these bankruptcies and all these companies that raise a bunch of money, sell all this stuff, and then use that money for operating and go bankrupt, a lot of customers are a lot warier of putting up larger deposits. So that's why we kind of put ours at $100,000 to join the program, fully refundable at any point, minus that 8% liquidation fee, and then giving you access to all 5 aircraft categories. So we looked at the industry and we're like, hey, what is everyone offering? And we focus grouped it with like 20 of our customers. And we have data on some of our customers fly with a couple other programs. And I was like, listen, you have our jet card, you have their jet card. Why? And it's like, oh, well, you're better here. They're a little bit better price for these types of trips. Or, hey, I actually like this company, puts me on a G650. Anytime I fly on that with you, I'm on like a G550 or a global, never a G650. So we get data like that. And it's like, all right, how can we change our product to fit, kind of the wider audience? But our goal is to be transparent, flexible, and through our dynamic pricing is probably the biggest thing on the jet card. So we actually pass cost savings on our customers because companies make money. You offer these high hourly rates, you source it, and you make the margin in between. On like a Van Nuys, Teterboro, and back at jet card rates, you're paying like 11 hours round trip times 11,500 on the super mid. It's not costing us $121,000 to send a Citation 10 round trip. So we pass those savings on to our customers, right? We still have a margin and, average savings anywhere from 20 to 40% per trip. And people like that. And again, it's aggressive. A lot of people are commenting like, there's no way that they do this. And we have the data. It's like, we'll show it to you. Like, this is a real thing. We, building that loyalty is really important to us. And being as transparent with our customers has really increased our retention.
So is it set up as like, here's a ceiling rate and then dynamically it can come down
Correct.
from that?
Yeah. So our Amalfi One jet card is capped hourly rate. So that's the most you'll pay. But we offer dynamic pricing on 95% of flights.
Yeah. I was going to say, how often are you beating that capped rate?
99.9% of the time.
Yeah.
In the hundreds, maybe even thousands of flights that we've done this year so far, we've only offered capped once. Someone only had to pay it one time, and it was like the middle of nowhere, like Fargo, North Dakota, like
or it's like a last minute flight, or
Yeah. I mean, our guaranteed availability is 48 hours. Again, there's other programs that are much better. For us and our clients specifically, we don't have a lot of, I need this airplane in 2 seconds. Our record from a cardholder calling us to taking off is 1 hour and 13 minutes. And luckily we were able to find it. They're already at the FBO. Yeah. But guaranteed at the capped hourly rates, we have that 48 hours.
There's a lot of things that go into booking a flight, that booking flights within 24 hours or 48 hours. There's like a lot more from a risk profile.
Yeah.
That like when people are moving fast like that, that's not a good thing for travel and for operating airplanes either.
It's one of the aviation hazardous attitudes. So we have a big plaque in our office called Get There Rightus, and why that's a problem, right? We have a lot of customers. We deal with it a lot. I need to get there right now. And the pilot's like, well, there's a small storm. Maybe we should wait a couple hours. And it's like, well, I need to get there. If you're not going to get me there, Jones Jets next door is going to get me there, right? So we recognize that. It's like, hold on, this is a situation, we're under pressure. Let's call the captain. How does a captain feel about this? And we actually had a customer get kicked off the airplane because they were shooting an ILS and it was like right at minimums and they couldn't land. And she was like, you get me on this airplane, get me on the ground right now. The captain, he landed somewhere else and kicked her off the airplane. Yeah. And our entire aviation career, that's the only time I've ever had anyone get kicked off a jet. Yeah. But rightfully so.
Well, there's a famous Aspen incident that basically the guy was going for a birthday. They got off late. There were storms in Aspen. And the guy was in the captain's ear and they crashed and everyone died on the airplane. It's like, that's the worst of like, get me there is probably the worst thing in an aviation safety standpoint.
And it's dangerous. A lot of people forget the risks of aviation. Like, we're flying private, which is fun and all, but you're dealing with people's lives here.
Statistically, it's so safe that people forget that, hey, like there is real risk involved. Yeah. I know it's like, and we do an incredible job here in the States and a lot of other places too, but we do such an incredible job that people almost forget about safety. And it's an important part that I don't think a lot of people think. What's the future of Amalfi? Where do you think you're going to be here in the next couple of years? New products or maybe not an airplane, personal airplane, but maybe
Definitely
not an Amalfi
personal airplane.
Like where do you see the company going?
Yeah, so our goal has always been to be the standard for being a charter broker in terms of a safety perspective, the fact that we know what we're doing. So obviously just to grow the brokerage side, growing our client base. We have a lot of customers on our jet card program, and obviously now adding customers to our Amalfi Enterprise. Goal, honestly, is to actually advocate for a little bit more regulation in the industry. I was working with some students at Embry-Riddle, kind of regarding that of like, hey, listen, 135 operators are very, very regulated. There's way too little, if any, oversight of charter brokers. Yeah, you have the Part 295. And imagine a lot of brokers don't even know that that's a thing, and they're kind of bound by that. So I'd actually say more regulation. I don't think it should be so easy to start a company in the private jet charter space. And obviously when we were new, started the company when I was 19. We didn't really know what the hell we were doing, right? But I was still a pilot, so we had some background. But realistically, we were that young company. I think that as we've grown, we've recognized it's like, hey, there's a problem. There needs to be some sort of standard how you can get in the industry. So regulation is really important to us. And then building our tech. We have tech, it's called Atlas, that runs our internal system that other brokers in the future could utilize, as well as our AOG recovery tool that we built. We track every single 135 airplane. We know exactly where it is. We know how many flights it's taken, so we can estimate crew duty. In the future, we'd love to plug that in with operator schedules, but it's a whole other challenge that's going to be a big problem with. And with that platform, we have great AOG recovery times because we just physically know who to call. But other brokers in the future could use that. So just growing, regulation, tech, biggest three focuses.
If people want to get in touch with you, they want to work with you, what's the best way to do that?
LinkedIn. I'm religious on LinkedIn. I'm a LinkedIn warrior, so I'm always on LinkedIn. So just send me a connect request and we can chat.
Awesome. And want to give them your website?
Yeah, amalfijets.com.
Awesome. Colin, thanks so much, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. This has been great.
Hi, thanks again for listening and watching the Ironbird Podcast. If you want to learn more about what Kolin does at Amalfi Jets, you can always go to amalfijets.com or follow him. I highly suggest it on his socials at Amalfi Jets. If you want to learn more about Ironbird, you can go to our website, flyironbird.com, or email us, fly@flyironbird.com. Thanks again.